Each man's life touches so many other lives. And when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? George's discouragement has become so heavy and so thick, it's turned into a loss of hope that not even being saved or saving somebody can pull him out. And so he makes this comment that I'm more dead than I'm alive. I wish I'd never been born. And as soon as Clarence hears that statement, he says, oh man, you must not say that. And then he gets the idea. What if I could show George what Bedford Falls would look like? What if I could show George what his family would look like? What if I could show George what reality would look like if he had never been born? By the way, before we go any further, if you've ever had that thought, if you've ever gotten into that space of thinking where it's, people would be better off if I weren't here, or if it's better if I had never been born, that is a lie from the pit of hell. Because we have an enemy and his name is Satan. He's come to steal, kill, and destroy. He's a murderer, Jesus said. Suicide is self-murder. And there's nothing better than he would love than for you to believe that lie, that this place would be better without you. And so you have to face that thought with what it is. It is a lie from the devil. Job even had this thought. Again, this is why the book of Job is in the Bible, so we can understand how low a person can get, like George Bailey or Job. Listen to what Job said in chapter 3, verse 3. Let the day of my birth be erased, and the night I was conceived. It'd been better if I wasn't born. That's how low we can get sometimes. And so Clarence knows he's got his work cut out for him. He actually says this little prayer like, this isn't going to be so easy. But then he gets this idea, and sure enough, he asks God, and God grants this sort of prayer. And all of a sudden, it's as if George had never been born. George gets, if you've seen the movie, he gets this opportunity to go back into town to see what's going on. And the first thing he does is he goes into a bar and he finds out that Mr. Gower, who led the drugstore many, many years ago, in a moment of his own discouragement because of the loss of his son, he filled the prescription bottle with poison for a customer instead of the right drugs. And he accidentally killed someone, and he lost his drugstore because George had never been born. And then he soon discovers that his brother never became a war hero because when he was a little boy in a sledding accident, died in a pond because George had never been born. And then he soon discovers that his Uncle Billy took over the building and loan for his father, for his brother, George's father, but lost the business because he couldn't run it and ended up in an insane asylum as an adult because George had never been born. And then he soon discovers that Bedford Falls is no longer Bedford Falls because it's been taken over completely by Mr. Potter and it's been renamed Pottersville because George had never been born. And then lastly, in the movie, it's so good. I hope you go watch it. George gets a picture of his wife, Mary, who never got married and never had children. She was a lonely librarian, sad and all by herself. And George gets this vivid picture of what the world would look like without him being born. And it clicks. There's a lot of great lines in this movie, but my favorite line is the line that Clarence delivers to George. Listen to this. He says, each man's life touches so many other lives. And when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he? What's true for George is true for you, and it's true for me. If you ever struggle with discouragement, or you have someone in your life who's struggling with discouragement and loss of hope, and they're contemplating ending their life, you must understand that your life up to this point has touched thousands of lives in a positive way. And moving on into the future, it's going to touch thousands more. And you are going to help and change and encourage so many people. And that's why God put you on this planet, to make a positive difference. And George gets it. He sees the impact of his life, and he's like, oh my gosh, I thought my life would be wonderful if I could build buildings and airstrips and skyscrapers and go to the Rome and do all these that's a wonderful life. And a lot of us believe that too. If I could just have more stuff and travel and buy more stuff and have more money and be famous, we think that would be a wonderful life. But it turns out it's not. What is a wonderful life? Here's what it is. A wonderful life is a life of helping others. That's all it is. George sees it. He saved his brother from dying in the pond that day. He saved his Uncle Billy from losing the business. He saved his wife from living a lonely life. His life made a difference. His life mattered. That's what a wonderful life is.